Well, in an unexpected turn of events, the Toyota Prius has been dethroned. I apologize if my audio sounds a little bit different. I'm in a different room, and it doesn't have the best acoustic dampening. But yes, the Toyota Prius has been dethroned, and it has been replaced at the top of the fuel efficiency totem pole with the Hyundai Ioniq. The Hyundai Ioniq being able to achieve 58 miles per gallon, just under the 60 mpg ceiling that was basically my expectancy based on the combination of every fuel efficiency factor that you could possibly do to a vehicle, hybridization included, at least in regards to a full-sized 4 or 5-seater car, without going down the road of reducing weight. So back in my cringy early YouTube days, I did a video covering the 2017 Toyota Prius, which hit 54 to 55 miles per gallon. And I don't even recall whether I stated it in that video, but at that point I knew 60 was likely the ceiling for a regular full-sized car. Short of reducing weight, there was basically only one major fuel efficiency step left that could be taken with cars and even with hybrids. And that was switching back to manual transmission, in a sense, at least. Still automatic for you, but manual from the car's point of view, as in you don't have that massive mess of planetary gear sets and torque converters and everything all stacked on top of each other, constant steps where you're losing energy from the initial shaft power. That one step left was to switch to a dual clutch system in which the vehicle's gear shift system is basically back to a manual, except it doesn't actually require you to manually control the clutch. The computer gives control signals for the system to change itself, but the setup has gone back to the almost or as close of direct connection of power to wheels as we can get that old manual clutch systems allowed. And the Hyundai Ioniq took that step. I was honestly expecting Toyota to beat them to the punch, but Hyundai actually jumped ahead and put it in the Ioniq, and so the Ioniq is now nearly at the 60 mpg ceiling, getting there by switching to a dual clutch system on top of the hybridization and all of the other fuel efficiency steps that have been added to vehicles to get up close to that point already. To go down some of the most prominent ones, improved aerodynamics. If you either remember or you look at pictures and see, you'll see basically a lot of the pre-2000s cars were all just like blocky and bricks and straight lines. But then sometime in the 90s to early 2000s, we started discovering what curved lines were. And so we started incorporating curved lines into cars. Some began implementing start-stop systems, a computerized system that will deactivate the engine if the vehicle comes to a complete stop most of the time, which adds some amount of fuel savings based on the fact that the amount of fuel used to initially start up the engine is not as much as people think. It's only equivalent to about 7 seconds of the engine idling. So in any situation where you're going to be sitting still for more than 7 seconds, then fuel consumption-wise, it is better to shut the engine off. Although overall, it would be better not to cut it that close to the line, and only really do it if you're pretty sure you're going to be there for like at least a good 30 seconds to a minute or more. Like if you're at a local stoplight that you know has a long cycle, like a 2-minute cycle until it's going to turn green for you again. Or if you're like my parents who still live down south in the lower 48 states, who constantly get stuck at railroad crossings as the train's coming, and they live near a large freight handling port, so they constantly get stuck in front of like decent 4 to 5 minute long freight hauling trains. That situation also, obviously, yes, it would be much better to shut it off. And then obviously the most significant change was hybridization of vehicles themselves, in which a electric motor and battery system now accompanies the regular engine. And the battery pack is small, usually 10 to 20 miles of range. And how the hybrid system works, on sort of a basic explanation, is it'll run in electric mode until the battery is basically dry, then it'll fire up the engine, and gradually recharge the batteries with a mix of converted idling power and regenerative braking. Basically, since, when you're sitting still, your car's engine is still running, and normally in a regular ICE, that energy is going nowhere. It's not doing anything because you're sitting still. But all those pistons are still firing. They're still turning the shaft. So instead of doing nothing, the hybrid system takes advantage of that and uses that turning power to turn a generator and regenerate the batteries. And it also gets some minor assistance as well from things like regenerative braking. But once the battery pack's recharged, the engine shuts off and it switches over to electric mode again. So basically, it just takes advantage of the otherwise wasted energy in the form of the engine's idling time to recharge the batteries, to then drive the vehicle with a motor and shut the engine off, thus moving the vehicle with the energy from the fuel that was spent not moving the vehicle. So bringing it full circle. And one of the few other things that's been added over time being fuel air mixers. Basically somewhat of a set of little swirl chambers where the air and the atomized fuel get mixed and swirl around so that they have a brief bit of time to actually come together into sort of the perfect mixture ratio before actually entering the combustion chamber. But that's what's gotten us here up to the level of the Hyundai Ioniq. Now, basically, the only major step beyond that that could get you potentially beyond the 60 mpg threshold is to start reducing weight. If you replace a lot of the steel with titanium, that would make the cars lighter. However, it would also make them more expensive, as titanium is, at least as of current, about 3 to 4 times as expensive as steel. However, given the different strength ratios, at least in different areas of the car and at different stress points and everything, you'd likely only need half to 3/4 of as much weight in titanium as steel, thus giving you, the weight reduction of 25 to 50%. Since a regular generic average car is usually like 2,600 pounds or so, roughly a ton of that weight, so the first 2,000 to 2,200 pounds is steel, and the remaining 400 to 600 is a mixture of everything else used everywhere else: aluminum, copper, glass. And assuming a best case scenario where you only had to use half as much weight in titanium, that would only be 1 ton. So instead of 4 times as expensive as the steel, that would only be 2 times as expensive. And a ton of steel is about $4,000, a little bit under it. So 2 times that would be like a bit under $8,000. So that would be roughly another $4,000 onto the cost of whatever the car's initial price was. But again, if you were in said hypothetical fantasy position where you didn't actually have to worry about money and all you really did care about was how much fuel the vehicle does or doesn't consume, then that wouldn't be a problem. And shaving off 500 pounds to potentially 1,000 pounds of weight from the average weight of a standard car could then potentially raise that 60 mpg ceiling up to something like 75 or even 80. But that's a hypothetical if. I do suspect that in the near or somewhat immediate future, some of the automakers are probably going to offer that option. Kind of like how now you already see things like a lot of car models, you have the basic version, and then you have, special side options that you can get, like the SX10 Plus version or whatever, that'll have like a spoiler and a somewhat different shape or something. Or like insert the name of the car model here, connected version, where like they have touch screens everywhere. There's a screen on the back of the chairs. There's a screen on the dashboard. There's a screen on the wheel. There's a screen in the middle. There's touch screens on the windows. Everything's a touchscreen display. Eventually, I expect to start seeing that more expensive option added, like, Toyota Prius titanium body version, where it'll be, like I said, $4,000+ more. But assuming they added a dual clutch system and it was at the 60 mpg ceiling, the titanium body version will then, be able to get like 74 or something. But that's it for this kind of sporadic video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like the video if you enjoy. Like always, subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already. Also, for anyone who can and wants to help me out in not worrying about the cost of things. My PayPal.me donation link is down in the description below. Thank you to absolutely everybody, donations, subs, or otherwise. May God bless every single one of you who even stumbles across the video, and I will see you all around next time.